Well, hello, and welcome to the Pen to Publish podcast from the two Alexas. If you're penning and publishing, or even just planning to pen and publish, you're in the right place. I'm Alexa Whitten, author, typesetter, and independent publisher, and
I'm Alexa Tewksbury, author, editor, and proofreader. You can never have too many Alexas. We love getting feedback, so do please review and subscribe. And we also have a group full of like-minded writers, which you can join over on Facebook and get your writing results happening. It's called the Writers' Refinery, and the link will be in the show notes that accompany these podcasts. So let's get started.
Well, hello. It's episode 2, series 4, and today we're going to be looking at heading hierarchies, call to actions, and ISBN boxes. Now, you might be thinking that if you're writing fiction, none of these really, apart from the ISBN boxes, apply. But I'm going to suggest something about call to actions for your fiction piece, whether it's a children's book or novel. So do keep listening. Now, heading hierarchies, what are they? Well, in business books, they are the level of headings that your book will have. So, for instance, your chapter headings will be heading 1. The heading below that will be heading 2. And any subheadings of that will be heading 3, 4, etc. Now, you can have as many as 5 headings, but I wouldn't go more than that, otherwise it just gets confusing. Now, when you're writing a long book, you can get a bit confused with what is what. So this is why I use Word style sheets to create my headings within the text. Then you can set your navigation pane to look at all of the headings within your Word file. But obviously, it's very difficult trying to explain this over audio, so I've put a link to the show notes that tells you exactly how to do this. But you need to think of how you're going to organize your headings. This is a clever way of directing your readers to the information and also organizing your book. If you don't get these formatted properly, and by that I mean how large the headings are, then you'll only confuse your reader. Ideally, you want your chapter heading to be the biggest heading of all, to really denote the fact that this is obviously chapter 1, chapter 2, with then heading 1 being quite a little bit smaller. Obviously, this will then appear in the text, but larger than the body text. Heading 2 then needs to be smaller than heading 1, and obviously heading 3 will need to be smaller than heading 2. But all of them are larger than the main text. I like to make heading 3 italic just so that we mix it up a bit. But I tend to have heading 1 and heading 2 nice and bold. Then when you come to formulate your contents, you'll see how everything relates to each other. Now, if you're still slightly confused about what I mean by headings, if you turn to a business book and look at the contents pages, you will then see what is in the book itself. And generally, any decent business book won't just have their chapters listed. What they'll have is a chapter listing, and then underneath the chapter listing, they will have the next part of that book that they're talking about. So go over to a business book on your shelf, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll also give a visual identification of what this looks like on the show notes, so go and take a look at those. Now, I've formatted books that have just one heading other than the chapter title. But to be honest, it was quite a short book, so it didn't really need any other types. But most average length business books will have at least 2. For me, headings act as a way of breaking up your text. So if you've got something long and complicated to explain, have a think of how you can break it up. Pages and pages of text with no break can be daunting to look at. So I see headings as a way of giving the reader pause. Also, your contents page will look amazing, and you can use this as a marketing tool when it comes to selling your book. It's one of the key features of the Look Inside on Amazon, and I think if you have a book with a comprehensive contents list, then it's going to be attractive to the potential buyer. As I said earlier, it's hard to explain a very visual feature, but if you look at the examples I give in the show notes, you'll see exactly what I mean. Alexa, you often help me when you're editing a book to make sure I get my headings right, don't you?
When I've edited books for traditional publishers, part of my job has been, as the editor, to code the headings. So as you say, give them a number or a letter so that the typesetter knows how that heading should look, what size it should be, that kind of thing. Because in nonfiction, obviously you can get sections within sections. So I might make suggestions to you as to how a heading should look. And then when I come to the proofreading stage, so proofreading the text after you've laid it out, one of the things I'd be looking for is to make sure that the heading hierarchy makes sense. So for example, that you don't have a main heading size within a section covered already by another main heading size. But as you say, it's difficult to talk about it. So it's easier when someone can see what you mean. So do go and have a look at the examples Alexa 2 will be putting in the show notes. It'll be much clearer then.
Yes. And when it comes to typesetting these headings, I also tend to use a contrasting typeface, usually a sans serif style, than the main text, just so that it then really gives the book some pizzazz, and you can really add some nice design elements when you get heading styles that don't look the same as the text. I think that's also really important. I know I'd go on about always using a serif font for your text body, but when it comes to headings, usually because they're so short, you can get away with using a sans serif typeface. So I think it's important also to make sure you've got some good contrast between the headings and the text itself. Now, call to actions. These are specific phrases you use to get the reader to do something once they've read the book. Now, for business books, this is fairly self-explanatory and very much an integral part of what you should include in your writing. You should have identified what you want the reader to do before you start writing your book, and I really want you to make sure that you have a clear call to action defined. As in, do you want the reader to call you, email you, or visit a website? Don't just assume that because they've read the book, they know what to do, because they don't. And also, I'm going to make sure this is very clear as well. When you give your details of how people can contact you, if your Instagram, for instance, title or name of your Instagram account is totally different to your author name, do make sure you make that clear. Because I was reading a really good book not that long ago about how to visually map out your business strategy. And it was written by a woman, but I could not find her on Instagram under that name. I found out that her Instagram name is totally different to her author name, but she didn't include any of that in her book, which to me doesn't make any sense. So that's just a quick little added bonus in there. Please do share your social media handles with your readers because they're going to want to get in touch with you. Now, call to actions, you can have a mixture of all three, as in if you want the reader to call you, email you, or visit your website. But it's better if you have one clear call to action, because if you give someone too many choices, they'll end up doing none of them. Now, how you write these is important. You want to weave the call to action into the subject you're talking about. For instance, let's say you're writing a book about relationships and you're talking about how it's important to work out what your partner's love language is. Your call to action for the book is to get the reader to visit your webpage. That's the overarching what you want the reader to do once they've read your book, because by doing that, ultimately, you're going to get their email address. So this call to action could explain the benefits of knowing your partner's love language, how it makes communication easier, and how you'll have a much deeper connection when you put them into practice. Now, if your aim is to get people to land on your webpage and get their email address, do you then give the love language quiz in the book? Well, of course not. You tell them the way to get the love language quiz is to go to your website, fill in the love language request, and then you send it to them as a handy PDF.
Can I just say, I love the way you've used love language as an example, because as we mentioned last week's listeners, Alexa 2 has recently got engaged.
Yes.
So I imagine love language is very much on her mind at the moment.
Yes, I have indeed. I have got engaged. I'm now a fiance, which is great. So
it's all there subliminally in your subconscious.
Maybe, yes, maybe. I think because I was thinking of a book in particular where they only use one heading hierarchy, that book was all about relationships. So I think I just had that obviously subconsciously in my head. So that's why I used this as an example. But you're right.
Okay.
You're right. But so can you see how you've taken your overarching call to action, which is getting readers to visit your website, and how you've cleverly done that in this example is you've explained a tactic that couples can use that's very effective, and yet you haven't given them what that exercise is in the book. They actually have to go onto your website to get it. And that way, you're making sure that the reader is giving you their details. So this way, when people buy the book from somewhere like Amazon and they don't give out those kind of details, as in you don't know who's buying your book off Amazon, you can then start to build a valuable list of readers so that you can then start emailing them other useful bits of info, and hopefully they'll then go on to buy more stuff from you. I'm sure that makes perfect sense, but it's amazing how a lot of people who are writing business books don't think of what their call to action is, or they assume that because they've written a business book, that's enough. It's not. You really need to tell people what to do, and you need to tell them more than once, and you need to tell them cleverly so that they do get off the sofa and do go take action. Now, for those of you who are thinking, well, I've got a fiction book, I don't have a call to action. You really should do. Why not give a call to action for readers to sign up for an exclusive Facebook group where the members can get involved with activities? Take Laura McLennan, otherwise known as Loza Mac, and her book, Don't Be Silly. She has a group on Facebook that includes a Be Kind challenge for kids and other exclusive content that is only available on her group. Kylie Dixon has it with her books. And in her latest book, Inkcap and the Blight of the Bonnets, she had a secret quest that readers could get involved with. So when you build an audience, when it comes to writing the second book, you then have a ready-to-buy group of people who are invested with your story. So think of how you can create a call to action in your book, regardless of its genre, and use it to get target invested readers either on an email list or on a group.
Yeah, this works really well with children's books because, as you say, there's all the potential for activities and also involving readers in the process of creation of another book in the series and getting pre-orders. And I know that a lot of our children's authors, obviously, when you're designing the book, you're sending them covers. And so they'll have like a cover launch event at the start, and they'll maybe have a snippet of the book. So there's all sorts of ways to generate excitement in a Facebook group and the anticipation for when the book is actually going to be published. And you've mentioned emails, so you could also get people to sign up for a newsletter. Now, I know children's author Jacqueline Wilson had one. I don't know if she still does, but I would imagine she still does. But it works for adult fiction authors as well. Now, last week, you're going to think I'm obsessed with Richard Osman's The Thursday Murder Club book. I did really love that book. I'm not obsessed, but it just works really well for examples here again. In that book, Richard Osman's call to action at the back is that you can sign up to the Thursday Murder Club newsletter for, as he puts, exclusive giveaways, quizzes, and latest updates. So that creates a brilliant marketing tool for him, as well as making readers feel that they're joining this sort of cozy murder club and they're kind of part of the author's gang kind of thing. So yes, signing up for newsletters is a really, really good way. It doesn't have to be a weekly newsletter, monthly, bi-monthly, 3-monthly even, but it's just a way of getting your readers' contact details and then keeping them in touch with what you're doing so that they're ready when you launch your next book.
And talking of Facebook groups, I'm just going to slip this in here as our call to action. We also have a Facebook group. I don't know if you know that, but we do. It's called The Writer's Refinery. We're on Facebook. All the details are in the show notes. So if you're listening to the podcast, you've got an idea for a book in your head, but you're not quite sure where to go, come and join our Facebook group. It's run by the both of us. We have lots of really fabulous invested people in that group. There's lots of tips. We run all sorts of writing challenges. We even have a special Zoom room where you can come and join in silently and actually get your writing done. So if you're not already a member of the group, do come over and see us. We're on Facebook and it's a private group. So it's nice, safe and secure if you want to share your writing, and we'd love to see you there. Now, lastly, ISBN boxes. Now, firstly, what is an ISBN? Some listeners might not know what that is. An ISBN is the International Standard Book Number, and it basically is a 9 or 12-digit number given to you by your publisher, and this identifies what the book is in terms of what the title is, what the price is, etc., and all the details. What happens is with that ISBN is you then get it converted to a barcode, and then that barcode obviously needs to be put on your cover. So most people put a barcode, they slap the barcode right on the back of the book. So how do you spot a self-published book? By this barcode. how can you make your book look more professional? By making these more of a design feature. Now, I have a house style where I have the barcode encased in a box. I have a strip of colour at the top, something that goes with the colour scheme of the cover, and then my publisher's name in that top strip. I then include my publisher's logo on the right-hand side with the barcode on the left. The price goes underneath the logo, and then any additional info below the barcode can happen. So either the cover designer's name or a photo credit. I've given an example in the show notes because obviously, again, this is a very visual thing, but it's a great way of getting quite a bit of extra info in a small space while making your book look professional.
It's all those details that make such a difference to the finished polish of your book. So do chat with your book designer about the ISBN, making it more of a feature when you come to that point.
Yeah, rather than just having a barcode with nothing else on the back. To me, that is a dead giveaway that a book's been self-published. So have a think about how you could possibly make it look less self-published and use that space for extra information. Well, that's been a very quick episode. We haven't rambled like we normally do, Alexa, have we?
I like a bit of rambling.
That's a very quick whistle-stop tour of the heading hierarchies, call to actions, ISBN boxes. As I've said before, looking at the show notes will explain it in more detail. And I've also included a really good article about how you can use your style sheets in Word to get these heading hierarchies making more sense as well. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Next week, we're going to be looking at the different associations you can belong to and why they're important if you're in the writing industry. This will include associations that editors and other book professionals can join in, including writers themselves. So do tune in. So goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.